Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're going to do something really exciting. We are going to build a wholesome, system-level understanding of exactly how religion shapes human purpose. We're not just going to look at rules or rituals in isolation here. Instead, we're breaking down the actual mechanics of meaning. By the time we're done, you'll have a clear, first principles framework to understand how human beings orient themselves in an incredibly complicated world.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever noticed that this massive, heavy question, why am I here, tends to pop up right when life feels just a little too big to hold in your head all at once? It happens after a profound loss, maybe during a major success, or even just in those random moments of deep doubt or boredom. But the question itself isn't really about finding a specific word or answer. It's entirely about finding your orientation. Imagine standing right in the middle of Karachi's bustling Empress Market for the very first time, completely without a map. You see the movement, you hear the sounds, you've got people and choices coming at you from every direction. But until you know where you're actually meant to go, all of that just feels like overwhelming noise. Human beings do the exact same thing with life itself. We don't just want to exist, we desperately want to know what our existence is actually for.
And that deep human need for orientation, well, that's exactly where religion enters the picture. Often, from the outside, we kind of reduced religion down to just a list of rituals or some strict rules. But at its deepest level, it's actually an orientation system designed to answer three heavily connected questions. What am I? Why am I here? And how should I live? Just think about how these are linked. If you think you're just a random biological accident, your purpose is going to look one way. But if you believe you are intentionally created, it looks completely different. Religion provides a comprehensive direction for a life, basically acting as a navigational tool rather than just a standalone set of beliefs.
Let's move to our first main area, the blueprint of reality, and see how this builds by exploring what religion is mechanically doing at its core. Because before religion can tell you what to do, it has to tell you what kind of world you're currently living in. Is this world random? Is it ordered, sacred, or purely temporary? You literally can't choose a direction until you know your environment. Think of it like opening a brand new app on your smartphone. If you have absolutely no idea what the app is actually for, every single button you press feels confusing and useless. But the second you understand the app's overall purpose, the entire interface suddenly makes perfect sense. Religion does this for reality. It gives you a map, an overarching story about the environment, so that the daily events of your life don't just feel like a random collection of disconnected buttons.
And this brilliantly illustrates the dynamic between what we need and what these structures actually do. On one hand, we've got raw, universal human needs: confusion about reality, instability, moral drift, isolation, and existential pain. On the other hand, we see what religion structurally offers to meet those exact needs. It provides a coherent story of what the world is, a deeper source of purpose, clear direction for action, a shared community, and a framework to endure suffering. If you strip away the specific labels and the cultural differences, this is the common blueprint underneath it all. Religion takes meaning, which, let's be honest, is usually pretty fragile and tied to your mood, and tries to turn it into something deeply stable.
Zooming in a bit, we hit the architecture of purpose, which is really about how purpose actually gets built in real life, because it definitely doesn't stay abstract for long.
You know, a lot of people mistakenly think purpose is something you just instantly find one day, like you just trip over it. But actually, purpose is built. Think about a river carving a path through a landscape. One single drop of water does almost nothing. But over time, the repeated, relentless flow of water shapes a deep, permanent channel. Religion works the exact same way. It starts with a story about reality, which defines what meaning is. Then, through repetition and practice, like daily prayers, meditations, or rituals, that meaning is reinforced. It's like training a muscle. You don't get strong by just admiring the idea of strength. You get strong through repeated strain. Eventually, this repetition carves out a channel of morality. It repeatedly asks you, what matters most? What kind of person should I become? And it just keeps asking until the answers become your second nature.
And a massive part of this repetition relies heavily on symbols. Religions use water, light, bread, fasting, specific dress. Why? Because as humans, we don't just live in the realm of language and pure intellect. We live through our emotions, our visual memory, and our physical experiences. A symbol is basically an emotional and mental shortcut into a much deeper meaning. Take a candle in a religious setting. It isn't just wax and a flame. It's a symbol pointing to purity or hope or the divine presence. The physical object itself is incredibly small, but the meaning it instantly reactivates in a person's brain is massive. Symbols ensure that purpose isn't just thought about, it's deeply felt.
Which brings us to the absolutely crucial connection between what you believe and what you actually do. If you claim to have purpose, the real test is what your life starts to value. Think of a compass. A compass doesn't just hand you a final destination. Its primary job is to keep you from drifting too far off course morally. And think of a lamp. A lamp's purpose isn't just to exist as a glass object on a table. Its whole purpose is to give light. If the bulb is intact but never switched on, it hasn't fulfilled its function. Religion views human beings in a very similar way. You aren't just meant to sit there and exist. You're meant to live in a way that actively expresses what you are for. Belief says what is true. Practice says what is important. Morality is what your life looks like when it aligns with that purpose.
Zooming back out to the macro level, let's look at the systems of meaning to neutrally compare how different traditions provide this meaning to their followers.
Now, what's really interesting here is the profound contrast between borrowed purpose and transcendent religious purpose. Humans absolutely cannot live without some sense of purpose. It's impossible. If a religious framework doesn't supply it, we will naturally borrow it from somewhere else, like career success, social status, wealth, or political causes. But borrowed purpose is inherently fragile. It's kind of like building a house on sand. If your entire purpose is tied to your career, what happens when you fail? Your whole identity collapses. Religion attempts to solve this fragility by grounding purpose in something higher than your daily performance or public approval. It builds the house on rock, tying meaning to a transcendent reality that doesn't just disappear because the weather of your life changes.
And here is where we see the truly fascinating diversity of human belief. While all religions are trying to answer the exact same fundamental human need for orientation, they definitely do not build purpose from the same materials. Different traditions emphasize entirely different concepts. Some emphasize strict obedience to a creator. Others focus heavily on liberation from a cycle of attachment and suffering. Some prioritize deep personal devotion, while others are built primarily around social justice, service to others, or inner awakening. We aren't picking sides here because what's absolutely vital to understand is that because they construct purpose using different materials, the very definition of a good life changes entirely depending on the system you're looking at.
So, the crucial point is this: purpose is not merely discovered, it is formed by the structures that repeatedly teach a person what matters. That single idea pretty much pulls everything we've talked about together. It's not just about what a religion says about reality on paper, it's about the daily habits, the physical symbols, the shared community, and the moral choices that slowly, relentlessly turn those abstract ideas into a deeply lived identity. Now that you can look at all of this like a true systems thinker, tracing exactly how purpose is built, sustained, and lived out, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Look closely at your own life. What structures, whether they're religious, cultural, or purely personal, are currently building your sense of purpose? What are the repeated actions, the symbols and the communities constantly telling you what truly matters? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I hope this framework helps you navigate the noise and find your orientation.